All right, let's get it. In today's video, I am going to expose the real evangelical agenda. And yes, this is from an outsider's perspective because I am not part of the evangelical society or class or whatever you want to call it, group. Um, but still, that doesn't make it invalid. And I guess I should also say that I am not a fan of Trump, not even a little bit. But I will say that a lot of what's going on today in the political atmosphere is not Trump's fault. I know a lot of people want to attribute all of this chaos to Trump, but in this video, I want to show that this actually started long before Trump came into the political atmosphere. Um, in my opinion, and maybe even before then, but I think Mitt Romney was the first candidate that they tried to prop up to further their agenda. He just didn't have enough charisma to beat Obama. And I think behind closed doors, most of them would probably tell you that they despise Trump. He does not align with their values. But he was the vehicle, he was the instrument that they could use to sort of get their message across, to sort of institute their way or to get their way. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to begin with this Bible verse from Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but are inwardly, I'm sorry, I messed that up. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. I want you to keep that in mind as we move throughout this video. Recently, I watched a documentary on Amazon Prime, which you can see on the screen, called Shiny Happy People. And some of you will remember the Duggar family. They had the reality show 19 Kids and Counting or something like that it was called, right? It was on the TLC network. And, you know, I watched it a couple times. I mean, I didn't tune into it regularly, but I watched it a couple times because I guess I was just fascinated at the thought that someone can have so many kids. But it's interesting how they try to portray themselves as the all-American, perfect Christian family. And I guess, if you have a reality show, unless you're the Osbournes, and your whole thing is we're promoting how dysfunctional we are. Most of these families on reality TV shows, they probably are putting on a good show for the camera, and not exposing their dirty laundry, which, hey, I get it, right? I mean, said unless you're the Osbournes, probably no one wants to expose their dirty laundry, which in my opinion, is like why I would never have a reality show. I mean, one, because no one would probably watch it, right? I mean, but I would never want to expose family secrets, dirty laundry to the world. Family business stays family business. That's how we were brought up. So these guys were a part of the Institute in Basic Life Principles. And this is sort of the and they have like a whole oh, forget it. Let me just call it for what it is. It's a cult, right? It's a religious cult. And the Duger family, they were very much involved with this cult. And it's funny to me that, no, it's not funny. I take that back. It's terrifying to me how people take one or two scriptures and they use it for nefarious reasons. How they can just misguide and miseducate people and use it for their own personal gain, their own personal agenda. So, I mean, if you want to read up on these guys, you can find them on Wikipedia, and you can read for yourself and see what these guys were all about. But it was a big deal, and if I'm not mistaken, it still is a big deal. So they have their own schools, they have churches, they have their own way of life, and basically they took the phrase "be fruitful and multiply" and like made it a way of living, which is why the Dugars ended up having 19 kids, because one of the core principles that these guys taught was being fruitful and multiplying. Have as many kids as you can. It was sort of like in the instruction manual. Now, put on your thinking cap and ask yourself, why is that? And of course, I'm going to tell you why. Because their goal is to overtake America. This is why they were instructed to have as many kids as possible, so they can flood America with their ideology. So they can have as many people out there influencing the world as possible. This was their goal. This is why the title slide says America Under Siege, because that was their goal, was to indoctrinate America a little segment at a time, to take over America one small populace at a time, to infect as many Americans as they could with their way of thinking and their way of life. And when I say infect, I do mean infect. And they were trying to infiltrate a lot of government organizations, right? So what do I mean by that? And you'll see as the video goes on, these guys were trying to get into politics. I think some of them may still be in politics. These guys were in police forces. They were in classrooms as teachers. And just in everyday life, right? But their goal was to turn as many people as they could to their way of living, to their way of thinking. They had guys like Mike Huckabee as part of their organization. Josh Duggar, who was later convicted of molesting his sisters, was running for office in Arkansas. You got Madison Cawthorn. If you're familiar with him, he's the guy who's been expelled from Congress because he was so radical. You know, the things he was saying were so outlandish that even his own party was like, whoa, dude, we can't rock with you on this. But this was the goal, was to infiltrate as many branches of government, as many schools, like I said, police forces. This was the plan, was to take over America a little bit at a time. They even had their own army. You can look this stuff up. I'm not making this up. Excuse me, I had to take a drink. Yeah, these guys had their own army, or still do. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure if these guys are still operating. I believe that they are, but yeah, they were training soldiers for what? What does a Christian organization need with soldiers? Who are they going to war with? The answer to that is us. Those of us who didn't conform to their way of life. We were their enemies, or we are their enemies. Does that sound familiar? Isn't that kind of what the GOP is now? Anyone who doesn't conform to the way that they think is an enemy? You're an outsider. You're dangerous. You're dangerous for wanting to teach people about true history. I mean, it's so ironic, right? I mean, because the Bible teaches about being truthful, teaches about truth and equality, and treat people like you want to be treated, to love one another. It's so anti-Bible. Their whole way of thinking, their whole way of life is anti-Bible. beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. Some of you guys may be familiar with The Handmaid's Tale. Very, very, very popular series a few years back. Here's the interesting thing about this. The young lady who wrote The Handmaid's Tale is actually a former member of this cult. She escaped. The Handmaid's Tale is loosely based upon her experiences within this cult. See, when they say art imitates life, in some instances, it's very true. So when you think about this dystopian future that this series is based upon, that this book is based upon, yeah, that is the goal of the evangelical class. That's what they really want. That's what they are after. Indoctrination and domination. This is the real agenda. This is what they're really after. So yeah, they don't really like Donald Trump, but he's a tool to get them closer to putting their agenda in place. He moves them one step closer to installing a guy who believes the way that they believe, not one that pretends so he can get their vote, because that's all Trump does. He just pretends that he likes them so he can get their support. See, he's using them and they're using him, which makes them both rotten to the core. But the next guy that they try and prop up, he's going to be even more dangerous because he's going to believe what they believe. And he won't come with all of the baggage that Trump comes with. See, there's always a bigger picture. There is always an ulterior motive. And 9 times out of 10, it's always worse than you think. Going back to the previous slide, I'm not going to go back, but just thinking about the previous slide, and I remember back in the day when Wesley Snipes asked the government for assistance. He wanted to start a self-defense school for black men. You know, Wesley's way in the martial arts and all of that kind of stuff. He wanted to start a self-defense school for black men, you know, teach them how to fight, teach them how to properly handle firearms. The government basically told him, hell no. But look at them, right? It's cool for them to have their own soldiers. But when it comes to us, so this is the head guy, the guy on the left. He's the guy that was in charge of the cult. He's the David Koresh type figure. A guy that has no wife, has no kids, but yet he's out here preaching family values. Have as many kids as possible. But you don't have a wife or any kids. That should be a red flag right there. But you have to watch the documentary to understand why this guy doesn't have a family. And spoiler alert, it's because he's a pedophile. Because he would take the little girls. And that's how he got his pleasure. And the parents were willingly giving their daughters to this clown. Go stay a weekend at his estate. Because he's going to teach you some things. Yeah, he was teaching them some things. Not things out of the Bible, but he was teaching them some things, all right. A wolf in sheep's clothing. See, they try and put on this front, right? That's why the documentary is titled Shiny Happy People. They try and put on this front. They look down their noses at everyone else. And yet they're the most evil. Everything that they rail against, they're privately doing. They're all about themselves. They're all about money. They're all about indoctrination. They're about pedophilia. Right? But they always want to talk about their Christian values. I don't know what Bible they read out of, but my Bible doesn't practice that. My Bible doesn't teach that. Second Timothy, verse 3. I'm sorry. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 through 5 reads, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection." We all know someone like that. We all know a lot of people like that, right? Truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. wolves in sheep's clothing. This is what you're voting for. See, you have to dig deep into who these people are to really understand the agenda. No, they're not going to come right out and tell you. But the truth is always there. My mother used to always say, what's done in the dark eventually comes to the light. What's done in the dark eventually comes to the light. The light's been turned on. Let's see if they start to scatter like roaches. So I'm going to leave it there for now. If you like the way I think, slide over to Patreon. Check out some of my original short stories. It's only $1.50 per download. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss out on all future videos. And I really hope this video doesn't get taken down. You know, I did a video 2 years ago, maybe. It was called The Second Biggest Threat to America. It was about white nationalists being the second biggest threat to America, domestic terrorism. The FBI has come out recently and confirmed that the second biggest threat to America, or actually they say the biggest threat to America, is domestic terrorism. These white nationalists. YouTube took that video down. I hope they don't take this one down. Because, you know, like I said, a lot of people not interested in hearing the truth. Well, like always, I thank y'all for y'all time. Peace.